The dining room glowed under the soft chandelier light, casting warm shadows across the polished mahogany table. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, a familiar melody of family gatherings. My husband, Michael, sat across from me, his easy smile lighting up his face as he recounted a story from work. My sister, Vanessa, perched to his left, her auburn hair catching the light as she leaned in, hanging on his every word. My parents, at the head of the table, beamed with pride, their voices weaving through the chatter. It was the kind of night that felt like a snapshot of everything good, until it wasn't. I'd been slicing into the rosemary-crusted lamb when I felt it, a prickle at the back of my neck, like the air had shifted. I looked up, and that's when I saw it. Michael's eyes met Vanessa's, but it wasn't the casual glance of in-laws sharing a joke. It was something deeper, something that lingered a heartbeat too long. Her lips curved into a subtle smile, one I'd never seen her give anyone but me when we were kids, sharing secrets under the covers. His hand, resting on the table, twitched toward hers, stopping just short. My stomach twisted, the fork slipping from my fingers and clattering against the plate. The noise snapped the moment like a twig. Everyone turned to me, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. Michael's eyes darted to mine, wide with something. Guilt? Panic? Vanessa laughed, too bright, too quick, and reached for the wine. Clumsy as ever, huh, sis? She teased, but her voice trembled at the edges. I forced a smile, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I mumbled an apology and bent to retrieve the fork, my face burning as I hid beneath the table for a moment, desperate to escape their gazes. Under the table, the world was quiet, just the faint hum of conversation above. I stared at the intricate weave of the rug, trying to steady my breathing. It was nothing, I told myself. A glance? A coincidence? Michael loved me. We'd built a life together. 6 years of late-night talks, shared dreams, and promises etched into our wedding vows. Vanessa was my sister, my confidant, the one who'd held my hand through every heartbreak before him. They wouldn't, they couldn't, but the image of that look burned behind my eyes, refusing to fade. I resurfaced, the fork clutched in my hand like a lifeline. The conversation had moved on, my dad now telling a story about his fishing trip. I tried to focus, to laugh at the right moments, but my mind was a storm. Every gesture between them felt magnified. Vanessa's hand brushing the table near Michael's, his chuckle at her joke a little too warm. Was I imagining it? I replayed every family dinner, every holiday, searching for clues I'd missed. The way Vanessa always sat next to him, the way he'd started mentioning her more often, casual but frequent. Vanessa said this, or Vanessa thinks that. When had it started feeling so personal? I pushed my plate away, the lamb untouched. My mom noticed, her brow furrowing. You okay, sweetheart? She asked, her voice soft but piercing. I nodded, forcing another smile, but it felt like a mask slipping. Michael reached across the table, his hand covering mine, warm and familiar. You sure? He murmured, his eyes searching mine. For a moment, I wanted to believe in him, in us. But then I caught Vanessa watching us, her expression unreadable, and the doubt crept back in like poison. The night dragged on, each laugh and clink of glass a reminder of the life I thought I knew. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I was paralyzed by the fear of what those answers might be. As dessert was served, Vanessa's famous tiramisu, of course, I excused myself to the kitchen, needing air, needing space. I stood by the sink, gripping the counter, the cold granite grounding me. The door swung open behind me, and I turned, expecting Michael. But it was Vanessa, her smile faltering as our eyes met. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely a whisper. My heart stopped. What did she know? What was she about to confess? The kitchen was dim, the only light spilling from the pendant above the island, casting Vanessa's face in half shadow. Her words hung between us, fragile and sharp, like a glass teetering on the edge of a table. "We need to talk." My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the distant hum of laughter from the dining room. I gripped the counter behind me, the cold biting into my palms, anchoring me as my mind spun. What did she know? Was she about to shatter everything I'd been too afraid to name? Vanessa stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the tile. Her eyes, usually so bright, were clouded, searching mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You've been off all night," she said, her voice low, almost accusatory. "What's going on with you?" The question caught me off guard, flipping the script. I'd expected a confession, not an interrogation. My mouth opened, but no words came. How could I explain the knot in my chest, the way her glance with Michael had unraveled me? "I'm fine," I managed, but the lie tasted bitter. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment I saw the old Vanessa, my sister, the one who'd braided my hair and shared my secrets. But then her gaze flickered, and I wondered if I'd ever really known her. "You're not fine," she said, crossing her arms. "You dropped your fork, you barely ate, and you've been staring at Michael like he's a stranger. Talk to me, sis." Her tone softened, but it felt like a trap, like she was testing me. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. The image of their shared look flashed again, vivid and raw. Should I call it out? Demand answers? But what if I was wrong? What if I was seeing shadows where there was only light? The thought of accusing them, of breaking our family apart, made my stomach lurch. "It's just been a long week," I said, deflecting, my voice barely steady. "Work stress, you know." Vanessa's eyes narrowed like she could see through me, but she didn't push. Instead, she stepped closer, reaching out to touch my arm. Her fingers were warm, but I flinched, and her hand froze midair. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. I wanted to ask her, scream it even, why her smile at Michael felt so intimate, why his eyes lingered on her like they used to on me. But the words stuck, choked by fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of losing him. Fear of being the paranoid one, the fool who saw betrayal in a glance. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the kind of question that demanded honesty, but all I could muster was a nod, my eyes burning with unshed tears. She sighed, dropping her hand, and turned toward the counter, busying herself with the coffee pot. "I'm staying here for a while," she said, almost too casually as she filled a mug. "Mum and Dad offered, and I need a fresh start." My heart stuttered. Vanessa, living with our parents, just 10 minutes from our house, closer to Michael, closer to whatever was simmering beneath the surface. "That's great," I forced out, my voice hollow. "It'll be good to have you nearby." The lie tasted like ash. I wanted her close, like when we were kids, but not like this, not with this shadow between us. She turned back, the mug steaming in her hands, her expression unreadable. "I hope so," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "I don't want anything to change between us." The words felt like a promise, but they carried a weight I couldn't decipher. Was she pleading? Warning me? My mind raced, replaying every moment of the night, every time she'd leaned toward Michael, laughed at his jokes, touched the table near his hand. Had I missed it all along? Had this been building right under my nose? The dining room door swung open, and Michael's silhouette filled the frame, his smile faltering as he saw us. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, his voice light, but his eyes darting between us. My breath caught, the air suddenly too thick to breathe. Vanessa smiled, bright and effortless, and handed him the mug. "Just catching up," she said, her tone so easy it made my skin crawl. His fingers brushed hers as he took the coffee, and my heart clenched. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but all I could do was stand there frozen, as the world I'd built began to crack. What was happening behind that smile? And why did it feel like they were both hiding something from me? The bedroom was suffocatingly quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every thought, every doubt, until they scream louder than any voice could. I stood by the bed, staring at the rumpled sheets, the faint dent where Michael's head had rested. My fingers trembled as they hovered over the pillow, where a single blonde hair lay coiled like a taunt. It wasn't mine. My hair was dark, always had been. The air felt thick, heavy, with the scent of something floral, unfamiliar, clinging to the fabric like a ghost. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to steady my racing heart, but the truth was clawing its way up, sharp and undeniable. I'd come upstairs to escape the tension in the kitchen, to find a moment to breathe, but this was worse. My mind replayed Vanessa's smile, the way her fingers brushed Michael's as she handed him the coffee. It had been so quick, so casual, but it burned in my memory, a snapshot I couldn't unsee. And now this hair, this perfume, this bed that felt like a stranger's. I wanted to believe it was nothing, a coincidence, maybe a guest, maybe a friend. But Michael's voice echoed in my head, smooth and reassuring, telling me I was overthinking, that I was tired, that I was imagining things. Was I? I sank onto the edge of the bed, the mattress creaking under my weight. My hands gripped the sheets, as if I could squeeze answers out of them. The night had started so innocently. Dinner with Vanessa, my parents, Michael, a family gathering, warm and familiar, until that glance between them had cracked something open inside me. I'd spent the evening watching, dissecting every word, every laugh, until my head ached. And now, alone in this room, the evidence was piling up, each clue a needle in my skin. But Michael's voice, so calm, so certain, kept whispering, "You're being paranoid. You're seeing things that aren't there." I picked up the hair, holding it to the light. It glinted, fine and pale, nothing like Vanessa's dark curls either. My stomach twisted. If not her, then who? My mind spiraled, conjuring names, colleagues, neighbors, women I'd never met but whose faces I could imagine, all of them laughing at my naivety. I dropped the hair, letting it drift to the floor, and buried my face in my hands. How had it come to this? Michael and I had built a life together. Quiet dinners, shared dreams, promises whispered in the dark. Had it all been a lie? The door creaked open and I froze, my breath catching. Michael's silhouette loomed in the doorway, his face half lit by the hallway light. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft, almost too gentle. I wanted to scream, to fling the hair at him, to demand answers, but my throat closed up. His eyes scanned the room, lingering on the bed, and I wondered if he saw what I saw. The chaos in the sheets, the betrayal woven into the fabric. "You look pale," he said, stepping closer. His concern felt like a mask, too perfect, too practiced. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice barely a whisper. I stood smoothing my skirt, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. His gaze followed me, steady, unreadable. "Just needed a minute," I added, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. He tilted his head, studying me, and for a moment I thought he might confess, might shatter the illusion with a single word, but he only nodded, stepping closer, his hand brushing my arm. I flinched, just like I had with Vanessa, and his eyes darkened, a flicker of something. Guilt? Annoyance? I couldn't tell. "You've been acting strange all night," he said, his tone shifting, a hint of accusation creeping in. "What's going on with you?" It was the same question Vanessa had asked, and it hit me like a slap. Were they coordinating? Testing me? My mind raced, stitching together every moment, the glance, the coffee, the hair, this moment, and I felt like I was drowning in questions I was too afraid to ask. "I'm just tired," I said, the words automatic now, a shield against the truth. But as I looked at him, his face so familiar, yet so distant, I felt the ground shift beneath me. What if I was wrong? What if I was right? The perfume lingered in the air, a silent accusation, and I realized I couldn't stay in this room, in this house, without knowing. "Michael," I started, my voice shaking, "whose hair is that on your pillow?" The question hung between us, sharp and dangerous, and his face changed, subtle, but enough to make my heart stop. What was he about to say? The air in the cabin felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for Michael's answer. His face, caught in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, flickered with something, surprise maybe, or the quick calculation of a man cornered. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it, each beat a hammer against the fragile hope I'd clung to for years. The blonde hair on the pillow seemed to glow in my mind's eye, a single thread unraveling everything I thought I knew about us. Michael's lips parted, but no sound came at first. His eyes darted to the bed, then back to me, and I saw it, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the way his fingers flexed at his sides. "What are you talking about?" he said, his voice low, almost too calm, like he was trying to soothe a startled animal. But I wasn't a child to be pacified, not anymore. My hands curled into fists, nails biting into my palms, anchoring me against the wave of nausea rising in my throat. "Don't," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, cutting through the quiet. "Don't lie to me, Michael. I saw it. The hair. Blonde. It's not mine, and it's not Vanessa's." My words hung there, raw and jagged, and I hated how my voice trembled, betraying the strength I wanted to project. I took a step toward him, closing the distance, daring him to look away. "Whose is it?" He exhaled, a slow, deliberate breath, and ran a hand through his hair. His nervous tell, the one I'd noticed years ago when he'd forgotten our first anniversary dinner. Back then, it had been endearing, a quirk I'd teased him about. Now, it felt like a warning. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, his tone edging toward impatience. "It's probably nothing. A guest, a friend, hell, maybe it's from the cleaner. Why are you doing this?" The cleaner. The word hit me like a slap, so absurd it almost made me laugh. We didn't have a cleaner for the cabin, and he knew it. This place was ours, a sanctuary we'd built together, or so I'd thought. Every inch of it, the creaky porch, the mismatched mugs, the quilt we'd argued over at that flea market, was a piece of us, or had been. Now it felt tainted, like someone else had been here, leaving their mark in ways I couldn't yet fathom. "Stop it," I snapped, my voice rising despite myself. "Don't treat me like I'm crazy. I know what I saw, and I know what I've been feeling all night. You and Vanessa. Something's off. And now this?" I gestured toward the bed, my hand shaking. "Tell me the truth, Michael. For once, just tell me." His eyes darkened, and for a moment I thought he might double down, deflect again with that smooth charm he'd always wielded like a weapon. But then his shoulders sagged, and he looked away, toward the window where the night pressed against the glass. The silence stretched, unbearable, and when he spoke, his voice was so soft I almost missed it. "It's not what you think," he said. "But, yeah, there's something I need to tell you." My stomach dropped, the floor tilting beneath me. I wanted to scream, to run, to rewind this moment, and unask the question, but my feet were rooted to the floor. "What?" I whispered, barely audible, my throat tight with dread. "What did you do?" He turned back to me, and for the first time that night, I saw something real in his eyes. Guilt, raw and unfiltered, like a wound he couldn't hide. "It's Vanessa," he said, and my heart stopped. "It started 3 months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. We've been together." The word together landed like a punch, stealing my breath. 3 months. 3 months of lies, of shared dinners and stolen glances, of me believing we were still us. My vision blurred, hot tears prickling at the edges, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of him. "How could you?" I managed, my voice breaking. "This was our place, Michael. Our anniversary. How could you bring her here?" "I didn't," he said quickly, stepping toward me, his hands raised as if to calm me. "Not here. Never here. It was somewhere else. But I ended it. I swear. It's over." His voice cracked, and I saw the tears in his eyes now, mirroring mine. But they didn't move me. They felt like another lie, another performance. "Then why is her perfume here?" I shouted, my control slipping. "Why is there a blonde hair on your pillow? If it's over, why is this happening?" I was shaking now, my whole body trembling with rage and grief, the pieces of our life shattering around me. Michael opened his mouth, but no words came. His face crumpled, and he sank onto the bed, burying his head in his hands. "It's not Vanessa's hair," he said so quietly I almost didn't hear him. "It's someone else's." My blood ran cold. Someone else. The words echoed louder than anything else, drowning out the sound of my own heartbeat. I stumbled back, my hand fumbling for the door frame, needing something solid to hold on to. "Who?" I demanded, my voice a raw whisper. "Who else, Michael?" He looked up, his eyes pleading, but I was already moving, turning toward the door, the night outside calling me. I couldn't stay here, couldn't breathe in this room with its secrets and lies. I grabbed my coat from the chair, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. "Don't follow me," I said, my voice steady for the first time that night. "I need to be alone." I stepped into the dark, the cold air biting at my skin, and let the door slam behind me. The forest loomed ahead, silent and endless, and I walked into it, my footsteps crunching on the frost-covered ground. But as I moved further from the cabin, a new sound stopped me, a rustling in the trees, too deliberate to be the wind. Someone was out there watching. Who was it? The forest swallowed me whole, its shadows folding around me like a cloak. My breath puffed out in white clouds, mingling with the crisp night air. But it did nothing to cool the fire raging in my chest. Michael's words echoed in my skull. Someone else. Not Vanessa, but another ghost, another betrayal woven into the fabric of our life. My boots crunched against the frozen earth, each step a deliberate act of defiance against the urge to collapse, to let the grief pull me under. The trees loomed tall and silent, their branches clawing at the starless sky, and I felt small, insignificant, a speck of pain lost in their vastness. I didn't know where I was going. The cabin was miles behind now, its warm glow a memory I couldn't bear to face. My coat, hastily thrown on, did little to shield me from the cold, but I welcomed the sting. It grounded me, kept me from spiraling into the abyss of Michael's confession. Someone else. The phrase clawed at me, sharper than the wind. Who was she? Another secret he'd tucked away, another lie he'd polished until it gleamed like truth. My mind raced, conjuring images of faceless women, their laughter mingling with his, their hands tracing paths on his skin that I'd once thought were mine alone. The rustling came again, closer now, a sharp crack of twigs snapping underfoot. I froze, my heart lurching into my throat. The forest, so quiet moments before, seemed to hold its breath with me. I turned slowly, scanning the darkness, but the trees gave nothing away. Who's there? I called, my voice trembling but loud, cutting through the silence. No answer came, only the faint whisper of wind through the pines. My pulse hammered, a primal instinct screaming that I wasn't alone. I took a step back, my hand fumbling in my pocket for my phone, its weak light a pitiful defense against the unknown. I thought of Vanessa then, her sharp smile and sharper words, the way she'd lingered at our table during dinners, her laughter too bright, too knowing. Michael's guilt had confirmed her role, but this, someone else, threw everything into chaos. Had she known about this other woman? Had she laughed at me behind my back, her influence twisting Michael into someone I didn't recognize? The idea of her mocking me, reveling in my blindness, sent a fresh wave of fury through me. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but the thought of her pitying gaze made my stomach churn. My phone buzzed, startling me. A notification glowed on the screen. A Facebook post from Vanessa, tagged to Michael's profile. My thumb hovered, dread pooling in my gut. I shouldn't look. I knew it would hurt, like pressing on a bruise, but I couldn't stop myself. I opened the app, the blue light harsh against the dark, and there it was, a photo of a blonde woman I didn't know, her arms slung around Michael's shoulders, both of them grinning at some bar I'd never been to. The caption was a knife. When you know you're winning at life. Better off. My breath caught, sharp and painful. She'd posted this tonight minutes ago, as if she knew I'd see it, as if she wanted to twist the blade deeper. The cruelty of it stole my air. This wasn't just Vanessa's usual sharpness. This was deliberate, a public taunt that laid my pain bare for the world to see. My fingers tightened around the phone, the screen blurring as tears welled up, hot and unstoppable. I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone into the trees, to erase the image of that stranger's smile next to Michael's. Was this the someone else? Or was Vanessa just playing games, using this woman to wound me further? The questions spun, each one a fresh cut, and I sank to my knees, the cold ground biting through my jeans. Another rustle, closer now, snapped me back. My head jerked up, the phone's light catching the edge of something. Movement, a shadow slipping between the trees. My heart raced, fear overtaking the grief. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Michael? I called, my voice cracking, though I knew it wasn't him. He was back at the cabin, drowning in his own guilt. This was someone else, someone watching, waiting. I backed away, my eyes locked on the darkness, every nerve screaming to run. But where could I go? The cabin was no sanctuary now, and the forest stretched on, endless and unforgiving. A low whisper carried on the wind. Not words, but a sound, deliberate and human. My blood froze. Whoever was out there, they were coming closer. The forest chill sank into my bones, but it was the shadow moving between the trees that held me rigid, my breath shallow and sharp. My phone's light trembled in my hand, casting a frail glow that barely pierced the dark. The whisper came again, low and deliberate. Not the wind, but something human, something close. I stumbled backward, my boots catching on a root, nearly sending me sprawling. My pulse thundered, drowning out the grief that had driven me here. Whoever was out there, they weren't here by chance. They were watching me, stalking me, and the thought sent a jolt of primal fear through my veins. I swung the phone's light in a slow arc, searching the trees for any sign. A glint of eyes, a silhouette, anything to confirm I wasn't imagining this. The forest stayed silent, mocking my panic. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of the night. Michael's confession, Vanessa's cruel post, the blonde stranger's smile. Was this her? Had Vanessa sent someone to torment me further, to ensure I couldn't escape the wreckage of my life? Or was this something else entirely, something darker, tied to the secrets Michael had only begun to unravel? I forced myself to move, my steps quick and uneven, the phone clutched tight. The cabin was too far, and the thought of facing Michael's guilty eyes again made my stomach twist. But staying here, exposed in the open, wasn't an option. I needed shelter, a place to think, to make sense of the chaos. My mother's house was closer, maybe a mile through the woods, a straight shot if I could keep my bearings. She'd always been my anchor, the one who'd held me together when the world fell apart. But even as I turned toward her place, a bitter thought snagged me. She'd defended Vanessa. When I'd sobbed to her about the affair, she brushed it off, saying Vanessa deserved her happiness, that I should let Michael go. Her words had stung then, but now they burned. A fresh betrayal layered atop the rest. The rustling followed, faint but persistent, matching my pace. I broke into a jog, branches snapping underfoot, my breath ragged. The phone buzzed again, another notification, but I didn't dare look. Not now. The forest felt alive, its shadows shifting, closing in. My mother's house was my only hope, but doubt gnawed at me. Would she even take my side? Or would she stand by Vanessa, her golden child, the one she'd always favored? The memory of her voice, calm and dismissive, echoed in my head. You're strong. You'll survive this. As if my pain was just a hurdle to clear, not a wound that might never heal. I tripped, my knee slamming into the frozen ground, pain shooting through me. The phone skidded out of my hand, its light winking out as it hit a rock. Darkness swallowed me whole. I scrambled for it, my fingers clawing through dirt and pine needles, panic rising like bile. The rustling stopped, replaced by a stillness so heavy it pressed against my chest. I found the phone, its screen cracked but glowing faintly, and I flicked it on, my hands shaking. The light caught something, a pair of boots, scuffed and black, just beyond the trees. My heart stopped. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching. I lurched to my feet, adrenaline surging, and ran. The boots didn't follow, or if they did, I couldn't hear them over my own gasping breaths. The forest blurred past, branches clawing at my face, tearing at my coat. My mother's house came into view at last, its porch light a dim beacon through the trees. I stumbled up the steps, pounding on the door, my voice hoarse as I called her name. The door swung open, and there she was, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. "What's wrong?" she asked, pulling me inside, her hands warm against my frozen ones. I collapsed against her, the words tumbling out. Michael's betrayal, Vanessa's post, the shadow in the woods. She listened, her expression unreadable. But when I mentioned the boots, her grip tightened just for a moment. "You're safe now," she said, but her voice was too calm, too controlled. She guided me to the couch, her hands steady, But I caught the glance she threw toward the window, quick and sharp, like she was checking for something or someone. My stomach dropped. The warmth of the house felt suffocating now, the walls too close. I looked at her, really looked, and saw something in her eyes I hadn't before. Guilt, maybe, or fear. Mom, I said, my voice barely a whisper, what aren't you telling me? She didn't answer, but the silence was loud enough. Outside, the wind howled, and I swore I heard the faint crunch of boots on the gravel drive. The warmth of my mother's house should have been a comfort, but it felt like a trap, the air thick with unspoken truths. I sat on the couch, my hands trembling as I clutched a mug of tea she'd pressed into them, the steam curling up like a ghost. My cracked phone lay on the cushion beside me, its dim glow a reminder of the boots in the woods, the shadow that had chased me here. My mother stood by the window, her silhouette rigid against the faint porch light, her fingers twitching at the curtain's edge. She hadn't answered my question. What wasn't she telling me? And the silence stretched, heavy and sharp, like a blade poised to fall. I forced myself to speak, my voice raw. Mum, I saw someone out there. They were following me. Her head turned slightly, but she didn't meet my eyes, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the glass. You're shaken up, she said, her tone too even, like she was reciting a script. You've been through a lot. Maybe it was just the wind, or an animal. Her dismissal stung, echoing the way she'd brushed off Michael's affair, as if my pain was a story I'd invented. I set the mug down, the clink loud in the quiet room. It wasn't the wind. I saw boots, black, scuffed, standing there, watching me. She finally turned, her face pale, her eyes flickering with something, worry maybe, or something deeper, something she was fighting to keep buried. You're safe here, she said again, but the words felt hollow, like a promise she didn't believe. I wanted to trust her, to sink into the safety of her presence like I had as a child, when her arms could fix anything. But I wasn't a child anymore, and the world had cracked open, revealing jagged edges I couldn't ignore. Michael's betrayal, Vanessa's smug post, the stranger in the bar, and now this, boots in the woods, a shadow that felt like a warning. I stood, my legs unsteady, and crossed to the window, peering out into the dark. The gravel drive was empty, the trees swaying in the wind, but the memory of that crunching sound lingered, a pulse in my ears. Did you hear anything outside? I asked, turning to her. She hesitated, just a beat too long before shaking her head. No, nothing, but her hands were clasped too tightly, her knuckles white. I thought of Vanessa, her cruel smile in that post, her arm draped over Michael like a trophy she'd stolen. Had she followed me here, to Minneapolis, to twist the knife deeper? Or was this tied to Michael's secrets, the ones he'd hinted at in the cabin, his voice low and urgent, like he was afraid of being overheard? I moved back to the couch, my mind spiraling. My mother sat across from me, her expression softening, but it felt forced, like she was trying to convince us both that everything was fine. You need rest, she said, reaching for my hand. Her touch was warm, but it didn't soothe me. Instead, it reminded me of all the times she'd taken Vanessa's side, her golden daughter, the one who could do no wrong. When I'd told her about the affair, she'd said I should move on, that Vanessa and Michael were meant to be. The memory burned, a fresh wound layered over the others. Was she protecting Vanessa now, hiding something to shield her? The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I glanced at my phone, its cracked screen glowing with a new notification. My stomach twisted, but I grabbed it, swiping to see the message. It was a text from an unknown number, just 2 words. You're not safe. My breath caught, and I shoved the phone toward my mother. Look at this, I said, my voice shaking. Oh. Her eyes widened as she read it, her hand flying to her mouth. But she didn't speak. The silence was deafening, broken only by a faint creak from the back of the house, like a door easing open. I froze, my heart hammering. Did you hear that? I whispered. My mother's face drained of color, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, raw and unguarded. She stood, moving toward the hallway, her steps slow, deliberate. Stay here, she said, but her voice trembled. I didn't listen. I followed her, my phone clutched tight, its light casting long shadows on the walls. The creak came again, closer now from the kitchen. My mother stopped, her hand on the doorway, and I saw it, a flicker of movement beyond her, a shadow shifting in the dark. My pulse roared, and I grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Mom, someone's in the house, I hissed, my voice barely audible. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something break in her, a wall crumbling. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking, and the weight of those words hit me like a blow. What had she done? The kitchen was dark, the only light spilling from my phone's cracked screen, casting jagged shadows across the linoleum. My mother's whispered apology hung in the air, heavy as smoke, and I tightened my grip on her arm, my nails digging into her sleeve. The creak came again, sharper now, deliberate, like someone testing the floorboards. My heart pounded so loud I was sure it would give us away. I pulled her back toward the living room, my eyes darting to the hallway's black mouth. Who's there? I called, my voice thin but steady, cutting through the silence. No answer came, only the faint rustle of movement, like fabric brushing against a wall. My mother's face was a mask of fear, her eyes wide, reflecting the dim glow of my phone. She shook her head, a small, frantic motion, as if to silence me, but I couldn't stop. Show yourself, I shouted, stepping forward, my phone raised like a weapon. The light caught something, a glint of metal near the kitchen counter, there and gone so fast, I wasn't sure I'd seen it. My stomach lurched. A knife? A gun? I shoved the thought down, focusing on my mother's trembling hand in mine. What aren't you telling me? I hissed, my voice low, urgent. She opened her mouth, but no words came, only a choked sound, like she was drowning in her own secrets. I dragged her toward the front door, my mind racing. The text, "You're not safe," burned in my memory, each word a spark igniting panic. Was it Vanessa, playing some cruel game to torment me further? Or was it tied to Michael, to whatever he'd been hiding in that cabin, his cryptic warnings about debts and promises? I fumbled with the doorknob, the cold brass slipping under my sweaty palm. The porch light flickered outside, casting long shadows through the window, and for a moment I thought I saw a figure, just a silhouette, tall and still, standing at the edge of the drive. My breath caught, and I froze, my hand on the knob. Emily, wait, my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. Don't go out there. Her eyes were pleading, but there was something else in them. Guilt, raw and unmistakable. I yanked my hand free, anger flaring through my fear. Why not? What are you hiding? I demanded, my voice rising. She flinched, glancing toward the kitchen, and I followed her gaze. The shadows seemed to shift again, a slow, deliberate movement, like someone was circling us, closing in. My pulse roared, and I backed away from the door, pulling her with me toward the stairs. We need to get out of here, I said, my voice shaking but firm. We climbed the stairs, each step creaking under our weight, the sound echoing like gunshots in the quiet house. My phone's light bobbed, illuminating faded wallpaper and family photos, smiling faces that felt like lies now. At the top, I pushed open the door to my old bedroom, the air stale with dust and memory. I locked the door behind us, my hands trembling, and shoved a chair under the handle for good measure. My mother sank onto the bed, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I didn't want this," she murmured, her voice muffled. "I thought I could protect you." "Protect me from what?" I snapped, kneeling in front of her, my hands on her knees. "Mom, talk to me. Who's in the house? What do you know?" She looked up, her eyes red, tears streaking her face. For the first time, she looked old, fragile, like the weight of years had finally broken her. "It's about your father," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He's not who you think he is." The words hit me like a slap, my mind reeling. My father, gone for years, a vague memory of rough hands and a warm laugh. Dead, or so I'd been told. I stared at her, my mouth dry, unable to form words. A loud thud came from downstairs, sharp and deliberate, like something heavy hitting the floor. My heart stopped, and I grabbed my phone, its light flickering now, the battery dangerously low. I stood, moving to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. The driveway was empty, the porch light steady now, but the shadows felt alive, watching, waiting. My mother's hand found mine, her fingers cold and trembling. "Emily," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He's back." The air in my old bedroom was thick with dust, the faint scent of lavender from a long-forgotten sachet clinging to the edges. My mother's words, "He's back," echoed in my skull, each syllable a hammer against the fragile wall of my understanding. My father, a ghost I'd buried in childhood, reduced to half-remembered warmth and the ache of absence. Dead, she'd said, all those years ago, her voice flat, final. Now her trembling hand in mine told a different story, one I wasn't sure I could bear to hear. The thud from downstairs came again, heavier, closer, like a footstep on the bottom stair. My phone's light flickered, the battery icon flashing red, and I cursed under my breath, my eyes darting to the chair jammed under the doorknob. I knelt beside my mother, her face half hidden in shadow, her eyes glassy with tears, or fear, or both. "What do you mean he's back?" I whispered, my voice sharp enough to cut through the haze of panic. She flinched, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater, unraveling threads like secrets. "Mom, please, if he's alive, why hide it? Why now?" My voice cracked, betraying the anger and hurt coiling in my chest. She shook her head, her lips pressed tight, as if speaking would unravel her completely. Another thud, deliberate, rhythmic, climbing the stairs. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I stood, pulling her up with me. The window was our only way out, but the drop to the ground below was steep, the gravel driveway unforgiving. I glanced back at the door, the chair trembling slightly, as if the air itself was pressing against it. "We can't stay here," I said, my voice low, urgent. I dragged her toward the window, fumbling with the latch, the old wood swollen and stubborn. My fingers slipped, nails scraping against the frame, and I swore again, the sound swallowed by the creak of the floorboards just outside the door. "Emily, listen," my mother said, her voice suddenly steady, slicing through the chaos in my head. She grabbed my face, her hands cold but firm, forcing me to meet her gaze. "Your father. He didn't die. He left. To protect us. From people he owed. People who wouldn't stop." Her words were rushed, tumbling over each other, as if she'd held them back for years, and they were finally breaking free. He made enemies, dangerous ones. I thought, I thought if I told you he was gone, you'd be safe. But they found him. And now they've found us. The room seemed to tilt, her words rewriting the story of my life in jagged strokes. My father, alive, a man on the run, not a memory in a grave. I wanted to scream, to demand why she'd lied, why she'd let me mourn a man who was out there, breathing, hiding. But the scrape of metal against the door, slow, deliberate, like a blade testing the wood, snapped me back. I shoved the window open, the cool night air rushing in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The driveway was still empty, but the shadows under the trees seemed to pulse, alive with possibility. Climb, I said, pushing her toward the window. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to the door, where the chair rattled harder now, the knob turning slowly. Now, Mom! My voice was a hiss, raw with fear. She swung one leg over the sill, her movements clumsy, her breath hitching. I followed, my hands gripping the frame, splinters biting into my palms. The drop looked farther now, the ground a blur of sharp stones and darkness. Another thud, louder, and the door groaned, wood splintering under pressure. I swung my legs out, straddling the sill, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My mother was halfway down, clinging to the drain pipe, her face pale in the moonlight. Hurry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I started to slide down, my hands burning against the rusted metal, when a crash exploded behind me. The door gave way, the chair skidding across the floor. I froze, my breath caught, my eyes locked on the dark hallway beyond. A figure stepped into the frame, tall, shadowed, the glint of something in their hand catching the last flicker of my phone's dying light. Emily, the voice said, low and familiar, and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't my father. It was James. The name James hit me like a fist, stealing the air from my lungs. His voice, that low, gravelly timbre I'd once found comforting, now slithered through the dark, pinning me to the window frame. My hands trembled on the drain pipe, the cold metal biting into my palms as I stared at the figure in the doorway. The glint in his hand was unmistakable now, a knife, its edge catching the faint moonlight. My mother's gasp below me was a sharp reminder of the drop waiting if I slipped. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My body caught between the urge to climb down and the instinct to face him. James stepped forward, his boots heavy on the creaking floorboards. The shadows clung to his face, but I knew those sharp cheekbones, the crooked scar above his left eyebrow. My brother's best friend, the one who'd lingered in our lives like a stray dog we couldn't shake. He'd been there through my childhood, a constant shadow, laughing at my scraped knees, teaching me to throw a punch, promising to keep my secrets. But there was always something off about him, a hunger in his eyes I'd ignored until now. The way he said my name, soft and deliberate, made my skin crawl. Emily, don't run, he said, his voice almost gentle, like he was coaxing a frightened animal. We need to talk. The knife didn't waver. Its tip pointed vaguely in my direction, a silent threat. My mother's hands tightened on the pipe below, her knuckles white, her eyes wide with a fear that mirrored mine. I wanted to scream at her to keep going, to get to the ground, but my throat was dry, words trapped behind the pounding in my chest. What do you want, James? I managed, my voice thin but steady enough to mask the tremor in my limbs. I shifted my weight, one foot still on the sill, the other dangling over the edge. The night air was sharp, slicing through my thin shirt, grounding me in the moment. I couldn't look away from him, couldn't let him see how close I was to breaking. He tilted his head, a half smile curling his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. You don't know, do you? He said, taking another step. The knife twirled lazily in his hand, a casual gesture that made my stomach lurch. Your mom's been keeping secrets. About your dad, about Vanessa. The mention of my sister's name was a jolt, a memory of her frail body in a hospital bed flashing before me. Kidney failure, my mother had said, her voice breaking over the phone just hours ago. Vanessa's only hope was a transplant, and I was the one she'd begged to get tested. What about Vanessa? I snapped, anger flaring over the fear. My grip on the pipe tightened, the rust flaking under my fingers. James's smile faded, and for a moment, something like pity flickered across his face. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by that cold, unreadable mask. She's why I'm here, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. You think this is just about your dad's debts, his enemies? He laughed, a low, bitter sound that made the hairs on my neck stand up. It's bigger than that, Emily. Vanessa's sick because of them, because of what they did to her. And you're the key. My mind reeled, questions piling up faster than I could process. What did he mean? What they did to her? Who were they? My mother's sob below broke my focus, and I glanced down, seeing her slip an inch on the pipe, her arms shaking. Mom, hold on, I said, my voice sharp with urgency. I swung my other leg out, fully committing to the descent, my heart hammering as I calculated the drop. James moved faster, closing the distance to the window in 3 strides, the knife gleaming as he leaned out. Don't, he said, his voice hard now, all pretense of gentleness gone. You leave, and Vanessa pays for it. His words were a blade of their own, cutting through my resolve. I froze, one hand on the pipe, the other clutching the sill, my body half in, half out. The night was silent except for my mother's ragged breathing and the distant hum of crickets. James's eyes locked on mine, and I saw it then. The truth he wasn't saying, the weight of something bigger, darker, pulling us all toward a breaking point. Get back inside, he said, the knife steady, his voice a quiet command. We're not done. My mother's cry echoed from below, and I realized I was out of time. The pipe groaned under my weight, and James's shadow loomed closer, the blade a silver promise in the dark. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and desperation, the kind that clings to your skin and seeps into your thoughts. Vanessa lay in the bed, her frame so small it barely disturbed the crisp white sheets. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, the blue veins beneath like rivers on a map I couldn't read. My parents stood on either side of her, my mother's hand clutching Vanessa's, my father's face etched with a grief that made him look older than his years. I stood at the foot of the bed, my arms crossed, feeling like an intruder in their circle of sorrow. James's words still echoed in my head, a jagged rhythm that wouldn't let me rest. You're the key. I'd climbed back through the window last night, not because I trusted James, but because I had no choice. The knife, his voice, the way he'd said Vanessa's name, it all pinned me in place, forcing me to listen. He'd spoken in riddles, his eyes glinting with a truth I couldn't grasp. Something about my father's debts, about enemies I didn't know existed, about Vanessa's illness being no accident. He'd let me go, eventually, with a warning to stay close, to come to the hospital today. I hadn't slept since, my mind tangled in questions, my body wired with the instinct to run. Now, here I was, facing the reality of his words. My mother's eyes met mine, red-rimmed and pleading. Emily, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. You're a match. The doctors say you could save her. My father's head snapped up, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. He hadn't spoken to me since I'd arrived, his silence louder than any words. I wanted to scream that I wasn't their answer, that I couldn't fix this, but the weight of their hope pressed against my chest, suffocating. Vanessa stirred, her eyelids fluttering up. I stepped closer, drawn despite myself. Her eyes opened, those familiar hazel eyes that used to sparkle when we'd sneak out to watch the stars as kids. Now they were dull, clouded with pain. "Em," she croaked, her voice barely audible. My throat tightened and I forced a smile, reaching for her hand. It was cold, fragile, like holding a bird that might never fly again. "You don't have to," she said, her words slow, deliberate. "I know what it costs." Her selflessness broke something in me. I wanted to tell her I'd do it, that I'd give her whatever she needed, but the truth was a knot in my gut. I wasn't sure I could, not because of the surgery, the pain, the recovery. It was the why of it all, the secrets James had hinted at, the ones my parents weren't telling me. What had they done to her? What was I stepping into if I said yes? My mother's hand touched my arm and I flinched. "Emily, she's your sister," she said, her voice a mix of desperation and accusation. "We've already lost so much." Her words were a blade, slicing through the fragile armor I'd built. Lost so much. She meant my brother, Ethan, gone 3 years now. His death a wound we never spoke of. I wanted to ask her what she meant by we, what they'd kept from me, but the room felt too small, the air too thick. I pulled my hand from Vanessa's, stepping back. "I need time," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. My father's head jerked up, his eyes flashing with something like anger, but he stayed silent. Vanessa's gaze followed me, her expression unreadable, and I hated myself for the relief I felt putting distance between us. I turned toward the door, my heart pounding, when a shadow moved in the hallway beyond the glass. It was James. He stood just outside, his silhouette sharp against the fluorescent light, his hands in his pockets, casual but deliberate. My stomach dropped. He'd followed me here, just as he'd promised, or threatened. My parents didn't see him, too lost in their vigil, but Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the door and I saw it, a flicker of recognition, of fear. My pulse spiked. She knew him. She knew something. I froze, caught between the room and the hallway, between my family's pleas and James's looming presence. His eyes locked on mine through the glass, that same half smile curling his lips, the one that made my skin crawl. He tilted his head, a silent question, a challenge. The weight of his words from last night pressed harder now. "You're the key." But to what? And why did Vanessa's fear mirror my own, as if we were both caught in the same trap, waiting for it to spring? I stood frozen, my hand on the hospital room door, James's silhouette a dark promise in the hallway. My heart thudded, each beat a question I couldn't answer. Vanessa's fleeting glance toward him burned in my mind, her fear, her recognition. What did she know? What tied her to him, to this mess I was only beginning to unravel? My parents' voices faded behind me, their pleas for me to stay, to save her, drowned by the rush of blood in my ears. I pushed the door open, the hinges silent but heavy, and stepped into the corridor. James didn't move as I approached, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp, like a predator waiting for its moment. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting his face in stark relief. Angular cheekbones, a jawline that could cut glass, and that half smile that made my skin prickle. I stopped a few feet away, close enough to feel the weight of his presence, far enough to keep my guard up. The hallway was empty, the nurse's station quiet, but I felt exposed, like the walls themselves were watching. "You know more than you're saying," I wanted to snap, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I said, "What do you want from me?" My voice was low, steady, but it betrayed the tremor inside. His smile widened just a fraction, and he tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he hadn't quite solved. "Not here," he said, his voice smooth, almost gentle, but laced with something that made my stomach twist. He nodded toward the end of the hall, where a stairwell door stood slightly ajar. "Come with me." I glanced back through the glass at Vanessa, her eyes closed now, her chest rising and falling in shallow rhythm. My parents hadn't noticed my absence, their focus locked on her. I should have gone back, should have demanded answers from them, but James's presence was a hook in my chest, pulling me toward him. If Vanessa knew him, if she was scared, then he was the key to whatever truth my family was hiding. I followed him, my sneakers silent on the linoleum, each step a choice I wasn't sure I could take back. The stairwell was cold, the air stale with the scent of concrete and dust. James leaned against the railing, his hands still in his pockets, casual in a way that felt calculated. "You're wondering about her," he said, his eyes flicking toward the door we'd come through, "about why she looked at me like that." He paused, letting the words hang, and I hated how he could read me so easily. I crossed my arms, mirroring his nonchalance, but my heart was racing. "Tell me," I said, sharper than I meant. "No more games. What's going on? Why is Vanessa sick? And why do you keep saying I'm the key?" He exhaled, a sound almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Your family's in deep, Emily," he said. "Deeper than you know. Your father—" He stopped, his gaze shifting past me, like he was weighing how much to reveal. "Your father made promises he couldn't keep. To dangerous people. Vanessa's paying the price. But you're the leverage they need." My breath caught, a cold weight settling in my chest. Leverage. The word felt like a blade, sharp and precise. "For what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do they want?" James stepped closer, his eyes locking onto mine, and for a moment I saw something flicker in them. Regret, maybe, or pity. "They want you to take her place," he said. "Not just for the transplant, for everything." The words hit like a punch, stealing my air. Take her place? I shook my head, stepping back, my shoulder brushing the cold wall. "That doesn't make sense. What does that even mean?" He didn't answer right away, his silence heavier than his words. Instead, he pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and held it out. I stared at it, my hands trembling as I took it, the edges worn and soft, like it had been handled too many times. "Open it," he said, his voice low, urgent. I unfolded it, my fingers clumsy, and saw a list of names, dates, amounts, numbers that made no sense but felt like a ledger of sins. My father's name was at the top, scrawled in sharp, angry ink. Below it, Vanessa's, and then mine, circled in red. My pulse spiked, my vision narrowing. "What is this?" I demanded, holding it up, my voice shaking now. James didn't smile this time. His face was hard, unreadable. "It's the price of freedom," he said. "Yours, hers, theirs. You decide who pays it." The stairwell seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. I clutched the paper, its edges crumpling in my fist, and thought of Vanessa's fragile hand in mine, my mother's pleading eyes, my father's silence. They'd kept me in the dark, all of them. But now the truth was clawing its way out, and I wasn't sure I could face it. Footsteps echoed above us, sharp and deliberate, descending fast. James's head snapped up, his body tensing, and I realized we weren't alone. Someone was coming, and the paper in my hand felt like a bomb about to go off.